Firstly, I just want to say thank you. I'm very happy that you are gathered here to listen to me when I gave this talk on planning for ideal tourism. Ideal tourism is very close to my heart. I have been involved in tourism all my life. I spent 15 years in the Singapore Tourism Board, which is the tourism authority for Singapore. And I've worked in Europe, in the Frankfurt office in Germany, and in London office in the UK. And then I joined the private sector, and like I said, 2002, I started my own consulting company. Although I am based in Singapore, and I've got all my knowledge in Singapore, I've worked in many countries all over the world, and I will show some of these countries to you later. What do I mean by planning for ideal tourism? Ideal tourism is tourism that is properly planned so that all the parties can get the best benefits out of tourism. It is important for us to have a tourism master plan. You say, why do I need a master plan? Why can't I just let tourism grow on its own? I've seen many destinations all over the world that have got tourism and there was no planning, and because it was not planned, they built too many hotels, or there was not enough planning, the roads are not enough, or the airport is not enough, and in the end the destination suffers. I believe that it is important to have a tourism master plan for the following reasons. One, it articulates the purpose and the vision for tourism. In other words, why do you want tourism? When I talk to a tourism minister, I will always ask him, why do you want tourism in your country? And the answers are always different, and you need to understand why do you want tourism. It also sets the directions for tourism. In other words, do you want high-end tourism? Do you want mass tourism? Do you want beach tourism? Do you want ecotourism? It sets the directions if you have a master plan. And then it identifies critical gaps and priorities. In other words, if there are certain areas in which you are very weak in, then you can put a lot of attention to that area and try and make it stronger. And you can say, this is important, I will put a lot of my attention to this area. I have done several tourism master plan projects all over the world. In 2004, I was involved in drawing up the master plan for Abu Dhabi. And it was a very good time to be there, and I enjoyed my work there. And I'm very proud of the work that we had done to set the tourism master plan for Abu Dhabi. But you say, tourism master planning is not just for a big country. I have done tourism master planning for big countries, for Abu Dhabi, for Mauritius is a country, Uzbekistan, but I've also done it for a province. Master planning at a province level. In India, one of the states in the north is Sikkim. Abu Dhabi, of course, is one of the bigger provinces within the UAE. I've done work in Nepal, in Pokhara, which is a city. I've done work in Russia, in Vladivostok, which is also a city. I've also done tourism master planning in a village. And when I first went to India, the chief minister of that state, he asked me to do a plan for that village because I think he came from that village. And he promised the village that I will help them. So I went to the village, the leader of the village, and I said, last year, how many tourists did you get? And he said, 100. So even for a village with 100 tourists last year, I was able to come up with a very simple plan, but it was a very clear plan to develop tourism. So what I am saying is that tourism master planning can work from a village all the way to a country. I've also done new developments, some projects in China that I've been involved in. I've also done some work in some existing attractions where they wanted to improve the tourism flow. Also work in China and in Malaysia. Why is tourism master planning important? Because it demonstrates leadership by the government. The government will demonstrate leadership and they say, everybody, this is what we're going to do, A, B, C, and D. And it tells, and it gives a lot of, it sets the direction for the development, it gives the industry a lot of energy, and it helps the investors who are considering whether or not to invest in your country. Because if you already have a plan to say, in 5 years, I will expand the airport, I will build a tourism school, then they know that you have a plan to do all these things. All right? If he's going to put in $50 million or $100 million into a new hotel, the existence of a master plan will help a lot of investors, give them confidence. Let me talk about tourism in general. You can see that tourism has grown from the 1950s. It continues to grow, and this data is from the World Tourism Organization, and it forecasts that tourism will continue to grow to 1.8 billion visitors by the year 2030. It means that tourism continues to grow in spite of wars, in spite of tsunami, in spite of financial crisis, in spite of natural disasters, terrorist attacks. Tourism continues to grow. Sometimes it goes down, but it always goes up again. In my 30 years of tourism, I have experienced some major crisis, okay? But I'm always confident that tourism will recover. So if you are in the tourism industry and your country or your city is facing a major crisis, rest assured that tourism will be able to recover. What else can I take from this slide? It is the fact that even though the majority is still going to Europe, which is in blue, Asia Pacific and the Middle East are gaining in importance. Another slide I want to show you, and this one tells you that from a GDP point of view, tourism accounts for almost 9% of GDP of the world. Tourism accounts for 1 out of 11 jobs in the world. In other words, of 11 jobs, 1 of them is directly related to tourism. Hotel industry, airline industry, cruise, everything related to tourism. That's how important tourism is. The UN World Tourism Organization says that tourism is the fastest growing industry in the world. Let me explain this little chart here. In 1950, if you look at the top 15 destinations of the world, top 15, 1-5, and you count how much of tourism do they account for. In 1950, it accounted for almost 98% of all tourism. In other words, these 15 countries were they dominated tourism. By 1970, it only accounted for 75% of all tourism. And by year 2010, the top 15 countries accounted for only 50% of tourism in the world. What does that mean? It means that there are more and more countries who are getting a slice of the tourism pie. There are more and more countries who are interested in getting tourism. The emergence of new destinations means that every country, almost now every country in the world, is looking for tourists. I'm very happy that I'm invited here to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to help in tourism development. I know I've been very busy with a lot of projects in China, in India, And I've also had inquiries from North Korea. They also want tourists to visit them. So many new destinations coming up, and many countries, provinces, and cities are suddenly starting to say, I want tourism. But this is another fact. Domestic tourism is even bigger than international tourism. In China, in India, and in Saudi Arabia, domestic tourism accounts for about 90 to 95% of tourism. So we cannot disregard the importance of domestic tourism. Why is tourism important? Tourism is important for economic diversification. In the case of Saudi Arabia, you have got 75% of your GDP is oil related. You are looking at tourism to diversify your economy. Tourism is a source of foreign direct investments, for jobs, for foreign exchange earnings, to retain all the money that is otherwise spent overseas. These are important reasons to develop tourism. Tourism is also important for heritage conservation. What happens if you don't plan for tourism? Remember I told you that? What happens if you just let tourism grow and there's no tourism authority or commission or ministry and you let it grow? Firstly, you have an indistinct destination. It means your destination is it's very unclear. You're not sure if your destination is a family destination or a beach destination, or is it a high-end, or is it a mass market, because all kinds of products are there. Also, you get what I call uncoordinated infrastructure development. You can have a very nice beach resort, okay, and your customers are having a good time in the beach resort, but when they arrive in the country, your airport is all full. So that's not coordinated. You can have a lot of overbuilding, too many buildings of new hotels at the same time. There's also things called what I call suboptimal growth or capacity surges. I bring up this point for your information. I was in Sri Lanka about 3 or 4 years ago. I spoke to the minister and I got a copy of his tourism plan. And in his tourism plan, he said he was going to increase hotels from 11,000 rooms to 44,000 rooms. That's 11,000 rooms to 44,000 rooms. So that's 4 times the number of hotels in 4 years, he said. And then I look at the next page. His tourism college is only producing 100 graduates every year. So this is definitely something is wrong. It's not properly planned. You are expecting to build more hotels, but there's no staff. So that's an example of the dangers of not planning. You will have a lot of environmental degradation also if it's not a properly planned tourism master plan. How do you go about doing tourism planning? People have asked me and they said, Christopher, can you share? I've shared it here. Are very conscious and they want ecotourism products. Cruise tourism is big in Singapore. When we first started in the 1980s, we had nothing, zero. Now we have over 1 million visitors coming in on ships by cruises. So let me just talk about ecotourism, cruise tourism. Something else which I found out also is in Singapore we've got MICE. MICE is not the mouse that is running around, but MICE is meetings, incentives, conventions and exhibitions. And it's a very high value tourism that we have developed. And what we have done is we have worked with the Singapore Tourism Board, the industry players, government agencies and other industry partners to develop MICE, and Singapore is a very successful MICE destination today. Medical tourism is something that is very strong in Singapore. some of you may have known of people who come to Singapore for medical. It is a very powerful but small segment. And again, if you have a good plan, then you can develop these niches. Education tourism is something that's quite new in Singapore and also becoming very successful. So what I'm saying is that a tourism master plan is a very systematic way of developing tourism, identifying your goals, identifying what you need to do, making sure that it's very practical, and then you've got a document at about 100, maybe 120 pages. But that's not enough. That document must be put into action. So the master plan is an essential foundation, but the plan is not enough. It needs to be executed. You need to put money, you need to put political will, you need to put effort into that. It needs to be consistency in effort in pushing through these ideas. We need to pay attention to details, and in Singapore that's one of the strengths that we do. And you have to have good staff at all levels. This is something that Singapore is very keen in skills training, in training the staff at all levels, not just the counter staff who is serving you, or the waiter who is serving you, or the counter staff who is selling you a souvenir, but managers, senior managers, directors, everybody is competent and knowing what he's supposed to do. I've mentioned this yesterday, talk about hard infrastructure. This is what is needed. You need attractions, hardware, right? Museums, you need beaches, you need galleries. These are all the hardware. And I've seen some hardware that's being developed here in Riyadh. And I'm very excited for that. But you also need accommodations. In Riyadh also, you've got good accommodations. Maybe not enough, but you can build some more. You need good food, restaurants, some more festivals and events to make the place lively. Access and connectivity, how to improve, get people to come to your country easily, and ancillary services. And on the other hand, we talk about intangibles, not just hardware, but people come for memorable experiences. This is where the extra special, to make the tourism, your holiday extra special. I talk about fulfillment. Fulfillment is when the father is very happy when his children are enjoying himself. The children are learning something new and they are excited. The father feels happy because he's fulfilled his job. The family is having a good time. Fulfillment is when somebody who is very eco-conscious is able to go to a holiday and he knows that he's very responsible and having a very small carbon footprint. Fulfillment is for people who are looking for new experiences and they go and visit some of these World Heritage sites, and there's a lot of education going on. I talk about certainty and reliability of destinations, and that refers to branding, consistency of service delivery, and this last one here is something which maybe in the last 10 years is becoming very important. Safety and security is becoming a very important factor in all destinations. In the past, in Singapore, we used to say, oh, Singapore is so boring, very safe, and very sterile. Right now, being safe is considered good, right? And we know that from a tourism point of view, safety is something we need to provide to our customers. So, trying to wrap up, the title says Optimizing Tourism Revenue and Stakeholder Interest. Why do I focus on tourism revenue? I focus on tourism, and why should I focus on stakeholder interest? We focus on tourism revenue We focus on tourism revenue because eventually I want to make sure that the country benefits from tourism. Let me try and give you an example. When I was based in Germany, I was the regional director for Germany for Singapore Tourism Board. So my job is to encourage the Germans to come to Singapore. And from the statistics, I know that the Germans just stay 3 days in Singapore. Not long, only 3 days. And my friend, he's the director of the Thailand Tourism Board. And he tells me that the Germans stay 8 days in Thailand. So I said, very good. But do you know that the German who stays 3 days in Singapore spends the same amount of money in Singapore as the Thai who spends 8 days in Thailand? For me, I think I got a better deal. He's there for 3 days, he's spending money, he's having a good time, and he's causing a lot of employment and spending. But if I have a tourist who is spending the whole day lying down on the beach, drinking one Coca-Cola, he's not spending, he's just taking up space. And there will be a lot of problems with that. So in my mind, I always think of tourism revenue. I want to give them a good time, I make them pay for it, and both sides will benefit from it. Give them a great experience, but make them pay. Let me give you an example. Just last year, I just finished this job in China, and we are developing the area around the lake. All right, it's a very straightforward project. We want to develop the area around the lake. And I said, please make it a good experience for them by having lighted pathways all around the lake, because it's a very good feeling to be able to walk around the lake, and it's lighted at night, and it's very romantic, or you can get the family to walk. But I'm suggesting this not just to give them a good time, but I'm suggesting this because I can increase the value of the land around the lake. I can increase the attraction of some of the tourism programs, increase the number of length of stay of the visitors, and increase the commercial proportion. So my thinking, and I'm saying, is we should always think of tourism to increase tourism revenue. When I'm thinking of a new site, I say, how can I get the tourist to spend more money? I don't want him to just enjoy the view, but don't spend. If I've got a nice view of the mountain, and I make a nice viewing platform, that's not enough. I want to put a restaurant or a cafe so that he can enjoy the view and buy a cup of coffee. All right? Stakeholder interest. Remember, for me, tourism is not for the tourists. Tourism is for the country. Your tourists come in to enjoy themselves, to spend money, lie down on the beach, eat at the hotels, eat at the restaurants, stay in the hotel. But they contribute to your economy. They contribute by providing jobs. They contribute by making the economy more diversified. That is, for me, the true value of tourism. Tourism is not just giving everything to the tourists. So whenever I train or I talk to people like this, then it opens people's mind. Oh yes, tourism is not to make the tourists happy. Tourism is to make the country better through the tourists. It is talking about community involvement, making sure the people in the villages, in the towns benefit. I talk about the island of Mauritius. About 20 years ago, they sold all the land around the island to various developers who built the hotels, and the people do not benefit. It's only all the hotel owners now that are benefiting. So we have to be very cautious how we develop tourism. Sustainability and heritage conservation are now very important. That's why I always say stakeholder interest is very important. This is Master Consult Services. This is my company. I'm a Singapore-based company, and what we do is we try and help destinations to position themselves, to develop themselves, and to market themselves competitively in today's tourism environment. I have about 10 minutes, which I would like to open for some question and answers. If you do have any question and answers, is there a microphone? Yeah, please. I'll be happy to try to answer some of your questions. Thank you. Nope.
Hi, sir.
Yes, sir.
You know the Singapore problem for about the visa. Therefore, Saudi nationality of Saudi people, it take long time to take the visa. There's something that keep it easy for your government or something to Saudi people directly go to Singapore without visa or take the visa from airport.
I agree with you regarding visa. You see, I am a tourism professional. For me, no visa is the best. But that is an ideal world. We live in a world where there is a lot of security concern. We live in a world where the countries are very concerned about who you bring into the country. And for that reason, there is visa. Now, what I am saying is that I've worked in a country as more difficult than Saudi Arabia, Uzbekistan. I have to get so many letters and stamps just to get a visa. But when I was working with them, I asked for a meeting with the foreign ministry. And I found out that I said, why do you need to know my father's name, my mother's name, my uncle's name? And then they said, oh, I don't know, because it was there already. So we managed to simplify the visa process, you know, and sometimes they don't even know why they are collecting that information. So it is possible to simplify visa restrictions. I don't think it's possible to remove it. Now, I know there are some countries that say, if you ask a visa from me, then I will ask a visa from you. So that is how government to government work. So it is also reciprocal. Okay? Any other questions, please? My company is called Master Consult Services. If you'd like to, come and get my card. If you have some questions, I'll be more than happy to try and share some more of my thoughts. Tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock, at the same time, I'll be talking about the importance of tourism data and tourism statistics for planning, right? If you are able to, I would like to invite you to come. But otherwise, thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.